This past year, I've tried a multitude of different clays in search of ones that would be most practical for figure making specifically. The qualities I was looking for were how easy they were to sculpt with, how much detail they held onto, how easy they were to pre-color, and their overall finish, meaning they didn't require sanding to have a smooth surface or alcohol to smooth out pre-bake. I'm not going to talk about all of the clays I burned through because that type of video would be way too long, so this is just going to highlight the best air dry and polymer clays I've sculpted with this past year and give some general tips and advice on how to get the most out of them. The best foam or lightweight clay I've tried this year is Bose Foam Clay Pro, not to be confused with Bose Foam Clay Light. This only comes in a giant tub and is a different formula altogether than their bagged light versions. It's very important that you grab the pro version of this brand if you want to make figures. This foam clay has the smoothest finished texture compared to all other foam or lightweight clays that I've tried. All others still seem to have a very foam finished texture like cotton or suede to them when they dry. This clay has been amazing for how light and easy it is to use. When using this clay, you can mix it with some cornstarch to keep parts up in the air better and to keep detail and shape even better. You can make sheets of it to dry and paint for things like belts and straps and other bendy materials and accessories that you want to keep flexible. Adding some Liquitex satin medium to it after it's dried will give pre-colored clay a more figure-like plastic sheen, and so will just painting on top of it if you don't want it to look matte. It takes paint incredibly well wet or dry. Cons are it becomes sticky when it's too wet, so use a bit of cornstarch on your hands if it starts to become too sticky rehydrating it. Another con that these types of clays have is it doesn't blend separate parts or overlapping parts together without a lot of pressure, which really ruins the shape, so instead, make a liquid paste by mixing a little bit of it in with a lot of water and brush this on to fill the gaps to smooth it out. It'll get sticky, so coat it and your fingers in cornstarch at the end and blend. Once it's dry, you can also smooth it out with alcohol wipes, but only the wipes work for some reason. Something about the texture of the wipes really helps the alcohol smooth it out, whereas just brushing or rubbing on alcohol doesn't work the same. Since it's lightweight, you'll need no or very minimal internal armature for support, and it's great for big props and things that you don't want weighing down your clay. Once it's dry, you can easily cut it or poke holes into it for a wire to affix to a base. It's very durable as well, so it doesn't easily tear or crack, and you can hurl figures across the room and they'll bounce around instead of break. I've done this just for fun with my Goomba figure many times now. This white clay can be easily colored by mixing in pastel pigments or paints. Pastel pigments will suck up the moisture, so once you have the color you want, just add some water back into it and knead it to restore its elasticity and you're good to go. On the other end, paints will add water to it naturally, and you can just sculpt after or let it dry a bit beforehand. If you added too much and it's too soft, just add some cornstarch to suck up the excess moisture. In terms of price, since this formula only comes in a 3-pound tub, it can cost anywhere from 30 to 40 USD depending on where you buy it. But keep in mind that 3 pounds of the stuff is going to last you a very long time. In terms of air dry porcelain clays that I've tried this year, the best cold porcelain clay I've used is still Sculpey's air dry porcelain. It has an amazing semi-gloss satin finish and incredibly smooth surface texture, making it look much closer to figure plastic than rough polymer clays. It holds detail and sharp edges insanely well for small intricate designs and easily matches pigment when pre-coloring it, whether the color is light or dark. Cons of this clay are that it can dry with lines, but these can be rubbed out with some water and a Q-tip after it's dried. It's also a more fragile clay, so having super glue on hand is a must. Another con is that it's very heavy in weight. Gravity becomes an issue with things that aren't paper thin, and it will flatten on itself drying, so you do need to have really good inner support built for bigger pieces. It works 1000% better mixing cornstarch into it. Cornstarch helps it hold its shape as it dries, especially if that shape is defying gravity without internal support. Honestly, mixing cornstarch into this clay before shaping it is a must, otherwise it just doesn't have enough in its original formula to bother with. Cornstarch also helps prevent it from flattening as it dries. I honestly don't understand why the original formula doesn't have more cornstarch added already, but it is marketed as a clay to use paper thin for flowers and translucent clear things, so maybe that's why. As far as how much cornstarch to add to it, just roll out the clay you're going to use into a tube and see how badly this sags with gravity. Mix in cornstarch until the clay doesn't sag or droop out of the shape much, then shape your piece. Like foam clay, this porcelain clay can be rehydrated with water but becomes sticky when it's wet. It also shrinks a bit as it dries. Use small amounts of water to smooth it out only when needed, and if you need to rehydrate it, cornstarch will keep it from sticking to your hands while it soaks up the water before it relevels itself. Lastly, a rule of thumb when working with foam, lightweight, or porcelain clays is to set them on a soft foam surface to dry. This will let air get to the underside so it dries more evenly and helps keep it from drying flat like it's prone to when it's just left on a flat surface. Both clays are compatible with regular school glue or super glue to help you with your projects. The best polymer clays I've tried this year for figure making are two different brands. The first one is Super Sculpey Living Doll Clay in the Baby Shade. It has to be the Baby Shade since it's formulated differently than the other clays in that line. Baby is amazing in terms of its ability to blend with just your fingers when sculpting, meaning you don't need to use alcohol to smooth it out before baking if you don't want to. It holds on to sharp, fine details the best out of everything I've tried, and it only has a 15-minute bake time to cure, which makes doing figures in multiple bakes faster and easier. It bakes with a beautiful semi-gloss satin finish. Polymer clays can be pre-colored with soft chalk pastels, but not paint because the water in acrylics will ruin the clay and the oil in other paints are usually toxic and not bakeable. Because the Living Doll line only comes in skin tone colors, all of your added color will wind up on the warmer side, and it's hard to get dark colors and cool colors with pre-mixing alone with this one. I really wish this clay came in a true translucent shade for color mixing like their air dry porcelain does. This clay is semi-translucent as well, so it makes really beautiful skin on its own, which is what it was originally designed for. This brings me to my last polymer clay, Fimo FX Translucent, or 014. Since this is a translucent clay like the air dry porcelain, getting dark colors is really easy, but unlike the cold porcelain, getting light colors and true colors with this one isn't. In its raw state, this clay doesn't show the color well and stays mostly white or pastel until it's fully baked, so it's very hard to see as you're working what your colors really are. This huge inconsistency between what you're working with and what you get after baking reminds me a lot of Cernit doll clay. However, this Fimo clay has an incredibly smooth and glossy finish when baked and looks the most like toy plastic out of all of the clays I've tried this year. Just keep in mind the color you're mixing in is the color that it will look once it's fully baked, and try to not mix too much in. You won't see it get darker putting more in. Any color you add will bake slightly darker because there's no white, so if you want lighter colors, you'll have to add an even amount of white as well. Another con with this clay is that it has a different bake time and temperature, with a bake time of 30 minutes per 1/4 inch and a temperature of 230 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not a common temperature for those in the US, and if you have an older or smaller range oven, you're going to have to do some guesswork since most don't list temperature markers below 250. Another con with this clay for me, but something that could be a pro for you, is that it's pretty firm. You can condition it with just your hands, but if you have hands that tire easily or get sore fast, this clay can be really hard to work with for long periods of time. This polymer clay is a really great bakeable cold porcelain alternative though for those who want a really glossy, ultra smooth finish with a more toy-like plastic look. Obviously, all of these can be sanded and painted over and glazed if you'd like, but the clays themselves don't really need it, which is what makes them stand out in the first place and why they're great for figure making. As usual, I'm sure I'll continue to blab about clays and paints and other things in my future sculpting time lapses as well, and there are still a few clays I want to get my hands on if I can, like Fimo Professional Doll, Modena Air Dry Porcelain, and Lidal Satin. Anyway, before I start rambling too much, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and happy sculpting.